There is something about Colorado in the 1970s that people who lived through it still talk about with a certain quiet pride. It was not flashy, it was not loud, but it felt real in a way that is hard to describe today. This was a decade when Colorado sat right at the intersection of old school Western grit and a new kind of American idealism. Before tech money, before overcrowded ski towns, before Colorado became a national obsession. If you lived there then, you remember the wide open feeling. The sense that the mountains were not a backdrop, they were part of daily life. This was a time when people came to Colorado not to chase status, but to breathe, to build something simpler, or to disappear into the landscape. The state was changing, but slowly, on its own terms. And if you were there, you felt like you were in on a secret. Let's step back into what life in Colorado actually felt like during the 1970s. Some of this will bring back memories. Some of it might surprise you. But all of it explains why that decade still holds such a powerful place in Colorado's identity. Living in Colorado in the 1970s meant waking up every day to real space. Real space. Not just physical distance, but mental room to breathe. The population was much smaller. Denver was still a big city by regional standards, but it felt manageable, almost relaxed. Downtown didn't dominate the skyline the way it does now. You could park easily. You could cross the city without planning your life around traffic. Neighborhoods felt stable and familiar. People knew who lived on their block. Kids rode bikes until dark without parents worrying too much. The air felt cleaner, the sky felt bigger, and the mountains were always there, visible reminders that life moved at a different pace here. Housing in the 1970s in Colorado reflected that balance between practicality and comfort. Most homes were modest. Ranch-style houses dominated the suburbs with brick exteriors, low roofs, and simple layouts. Split levels were common too, especially in growing areas along the Front Range. Houses were affordable for middle-class families, often on a single income. A teacher, a mechanic, or someone working in energy or construction could realistically buy a home. Inside, the design followed the decade's trends. Earth tones were everywhere. Brown, orange, gold, and olive green filled living rooms and kitchens. Shag carpeting covered floors, sometimes wall to wall. Wood paneling appeared in basements and family rooms, creating cozy spaces where families gathered during cold winters. Fireplaces weren't decorative, they were functional. Colorado winters demanded warmth, and homes were built for it. Basements played a major role in Colorado homes. These weren't just storage spaces, they were where life happened. Pool tables, ping pong, old couches, and a television set with rabbit ear antennas. During snowstorms, families retreated downstairs, playing board games or watching television while the wind howled outside. Winters were serious business. Snowfall was expected, not a novelty. Kids wore heavy coats, mittens clipped together, and boots that needed to dry overnight by the heater. Snow days happened, but they weren't automatic. Schools often stayed open unless conditions were truly dangerous. Shoveling driveways was part of daily life, and neighbors helped each other without making a big deal about it. Transportation. In 1970s Colorado revolved around the car. Public transit existed, but was limited. Families relied on sedans, pickup trucks, and station wagons. Four-wheel drive vehicles were common, especially outside cities. They weren't lifestyle accessories, they were necessities. Mountain roads could be treacherous in winter. Rear-wheel drive cars slid easily on ice, and getting stuck wasn't unusual. People carried chains in their trunks and knew how to use them. The 1973 oil crisis hit Colorado hard, especially because distances were long and alternatives were few. Gas lines formed. Prices jumped. People planned errands carefully. Smaller, more fuel-efficient cars became more popular, but trucks remained essential for work and winter travel. Before we go deeper into the culture and identity that defined Colorado in the 1970s, take a moment to imagine what that daily rhythm felt like. If you're enjoying this journey back in time and want to explore more decades and places just like this, consider subscribing. There's a lot more history waiting to be uncovered. Colorado's economy in the 1970s was shaped by industries that tied directly to the land. Oil shale, coal, and natural gas projects brought workers into the state, especially in western Colorado. Boom towns appeared almost overnight, and then sometimes they collapsed just as quickly. This cycle of boom and bust was familiar to Coloradans. It created a cautious mindset. People learned not to assume prosperity would last forever. Mining, though no longer at its peak, still played a role in certain areas. Agriculture remained vital on the plains. Farming and ranching anchored many rural communities. Life there moved slowly, dictated by seasons rather than trends. At the same time, a quieter transformation was happening. Colorado was becoming a magnet for people seeking an alternative lifestyle. The counterculture movement of the late 1960s did not disappear in the 1970s, it migrated. Many of those people landed in Colorado. Towns like Boulder became centers of environmentalism, alternative education, and back to the land living. Communes and cooperative housing were not unusual. Organic gardening, solar experiments, and handmade crafts were part of daily life for some residents. This was not fringe behavior in certain areas. It was normal. Colorado gave people room to try living differently. Music in Colorado in the 1970s reflected that blend of rugged independence and introspection. Folk and country rock felt right at home here. John Denver became the musical voice of the state, even though he was not born there. His songs captured an idealized vision of mountain life that resonated deeply. Rocky Mountain High was not just a song, it was an anthem. People felt seen by it. Live music venues thrived in small towns and cities alike. Bars and community halls hosted local bands. Concerts felt intimate. Music was not something you consumed passively. It was something you participated in. The mountains defined everything about life in Colorado during the 1970s. Skiing wasn't yet the luxury experience it would become later. Ski towns like Aspen were still rough around the edges. Yes, Aspen had already begun its transformation, but it hadn't fully turned into the exclusive playground it is today. Lift tickets were affordable. Locals skied regularly, not just on special occasions. Ski bums lived cheaply, working odd jobs to stay near the slopes. Towns like Breckenridge, Vail, and Steamboat Springs were growing, but they still felt like real communities. There was a sense that everyone belonged there for the same reason: the mountains. Summer in Colorado was just as important as winter. Hiking, fishing, camping, and rafting were everyday activities, not curated experiences. Families piled into cars and drove into the mountains for weekend trips. Campgrounds were plentiful and uncrowded. National parks and forests felt endless. People respected the land, often because they depended on it. Environmental awareness grew throughout the decade. Colorado became a leader in conservation efforts, partly because residents could see firsthand what development threatened to destroy. The tension between growth and preservation became a defining issue. Television and media in Colorado in the 1970s were simple. Most households had one television set. Cable existed in some areas, but was not universal. Reception could be spotty in mountainous regions. Watching television was a shared experience. Local news mattered. Weather forecasts were essential, especially in winter. Severe snowstorms could isolate towns for days. Radio remained powerful. AM and FM radio stations connected communities, sharing music, news, and emergency information. DJs were local personalities, not distant celebrities. Food culture in Colorado during the 1970s was practical and hearty. Home cooking dominated, and meals were built around meat, potatoes, and seasonal vegetables. Casseroles were common, and slow cookers became popular as more women entered the workforce. Eating out was not a daily habit. When families did go out, it was often for special occasions. Steakhouses, diners, and Mexican restaurants were staples. Mexican food had a strong presence, especially in southern Colorado, influenced by long-standing Hispanic communities. Green chili was not trendy. It was tradition. Shopping meant local stores and malls that felt like community centers. Downtown areas still mattered. Small businesses thrived. Hardware stores, outdoor outfitters, and family-owned shops were essential parts of daily life. Big box retail had not taken over yet. People shopped with intention. You knew the people behind the counter. That familiarity created trust and accountability that is rare today. Life in Colorado in the 1970s was not perfect. Jobs could be unstable. Winters could be brutal. Isolation was real, especially in rural areas. Medical care could require long drives. Economic downturns hit hard. But there was resilience. Communities looked out for each other. People valued self-reliance without rejecting cooperation. The pace of life allowed reflection. Success was not measured by speed or scale, but by stability and satisfaction. What defined Colorado in the 1970s was balance between nature and development, between tradition and experimentation, between solitude and community. The state was not trying to impress anyone. It was simply living its identity. Those who were there remember a Colorado that felt authentic, unpolished, and deeply human. A place where the mountains were not just scenery, but teachers. For those who lived it, that decade was not just a chapter in history. It was a way of life. And once you have experienced that version of Colorado, it never really leaves you.